Mr. Justice, Honorable Peter Kovac, dear organizers, dear colleagues, it is an honor for me to be here before you and to talk about the ICC and Africa. I would like to take this occasion to thank my colleague, Professor Susanna Kralic, who has recommended me. So I was home, I think I was writing an article, then she called me and said, there's a topic, the ICC in Africa, would you take it? Anyway, you are the only African at the faculty, so you should take it. And I was like, yeah, sure. This seems very interesting. I'll take it. Yeah, easy. And then I was like, wait a second. That was already too late. Hang up. But the topic is a bit too broad, too large, too general. What should I be talking about? Or maybe it's a whole lecture. Oh, no, not a whole lecture, 20 minutes, perfect. Okay, so I can talk generally about the ICC and Africa. But my colleagues, they are scholars, they are lawyers, and they want the specificities. Yes, then I should talk about the specificities. Then people will say, why did you skip the general part? Then I decide to start with the general part and to finish with the specificities. And the first question that comes to mind when you want to talk about the ICC and Africa is why? Why are people talking about the ICC and Africa? Why aren't they talking about the ICC in South Africa, South America, the ICC in Asia? They do talk about it, but not with the same constants, right? And then you have to go back to time and to see what has been happening on the African continent. Well, Africa is a big place, more than 1 billion people, 54 countries, and mostly those countries were free as of 1960 for most of them. Some were a bit free earlier, decades before, but most have their independence from 1960. So you have to understand that most of the rulers have never exercised the rule of power, or maybe, and it's too tempting for them to use that new tool that they got from the ex-colonizers, and maybe they just mismanaged. And that resulted, unfortunately, to several wars. Because you have people, most of them who have been deported back then during slavery, which is a crime, and those who were left in the continent. And then at the end of colonialism and independence, where you have different ethnies left alone to take care of themselves, of course, but wait a second, they have not been properly schooled before that. They have not been trained for the job. Well, to lead the country, you need to be trained. You need to be ready. That's why we are here. We all went to school, went to university, through high schools, different countries. We have the knowledge. As the president of a country, you know what to do. You know how a state is managed. You know that you need a parliament, you need a justice, and because you are the executive yourself, you know how the NGOs work. But when you don't have that level of education, when you don't have the capacity to acknowledge that you may lose the elections, well, this now, we have to put a bracket because it can happen in Africa and it can happen also in the USA and in other countries, that you can lose and say, well, I didn't really lose. I mean, I was stolen of my victory. So imagine yourself that you have people that were not trained properly to deal with all I have been talking about. And you have different ethnies. And you say, okay, this is the country, right? Rule. Who do you think will rule? According to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, well, maybe the opposite. Maybe Hobbes. Hobbes is perfect here. Yeah. We are wolves to one another. Right? So the strongest want to rule. The natural part of things. And exactly in 1994, you have the genocide in Rwanda with 800,000 dead in only 100 days. So 800,000 people, it's more than the population of Montenegro, a beautiful country I have visited not long ago. Very nice. but you have 800,000 people in less than 100 days. We are talking about death casualty here. We are not talking about Bitcoin or anything else. That's a lot. Then you continue. And you take the first and second wars, they call it African wars, in Congo. Congo is a big country, was a Belgian colony ruled by the Belgian king. And again, the same thing. Independence, you are free, rule. Well, they were not so happy actually to give independence, so you have to understand that why, people were not properly trained. And those who were trained, like Patrice Lumumba, unfortunately fell under some political stratagems and were killed around the way, unfortunately. Those who were capable to rule were taken out because they were too good, maybe. Politics is different, we are lawyers. Anyway, the first and second Congo wars brought us to 100,000 to 1 million of deaths. 100,000 is, I live in Maribor in Slovenia, and our population, the population of that city, the city where I live, the second biggest in Slovenia is 100,000 people. So I'm just giving this number so you can imagine yourself what it means, because sometimes you say, okay, 100,000, next, 200,000, but these are people we are talking about. And when it comes to statistics, the numbers are not always exact, can be way more, a bit less, but still, it's terrific, it's terrible. You move to the Sudanese wars, and here you have 1.5 million. So you see, now the next level, 1.5 million people. And in the Darfur, you have 2 million people displaced and 200,000 killed. So 1.5 million is nearly the population of Slovenia, the whole country. It's more than Estonia, and it has the population of Croatia, my neighbors. Then you move to Uganda. You have seen the movie, The King of Scotland, Idi Amin. So he was very ruthless, of course, and didn't know how to use his power fully, wanted to control everything, even over. He was in love with the Queen of England back then, okay? But still, during his ruling, he had killed nearly 10,000 people. And that brought the war between Tanzania and Uganda, because Tanzania wanted him out. Next, we go to the Liberian Wars, also near 2,100 death toll. Was returned to Charles Taylor to be prosecuted by the ICC. We will come to that later. And we have the Sierra Leone law as well. 50,000 people death toll. Okay. Usually, we start these conferences with, good notes, introduction. But then I came with the total opposite, giving you subject to think what we are talking about. We are not here because, what is the ICC? It's something very serious. It's a court. Criminal. You have a different kind of court. You have court for family matters. I love you, I don't love you anymore, let's divorce, You take this house, I take that one, I take the Jaguar, I take the Fiat, you take the Maserati. But here we are talking about people's lives. The most important thing on earth. Not the cars, not the houses, not the materials, but human beings. And we are talking about killed, executed, we are talking about atrocities. And it happens where? Back then, I can understand. Not really, the population was pretty young, coming from colonialism, didn't know, but still it happened. It happened in Africa. So to the question, why the ICC and Africa, I know we are very vocal. Yes, Africa is targeted. Absolutely. I know. Let's start from the beginning. So why is it targeted? And now that it's targeted, so imagine yourself that you live in a country where you have 100,000 people dead, a change of government, and now the new power of God wants justice, wants to prove that they have learned the lesson. Lesson learned and unlearned, right? They have learned the lesson and they want to do better, to improve the situation, to come together at least as a nation, because they were not used to be a nation. There were different ethnies, right? You have maybe in some countries 200 different group of people. How do you want them to rule, to live together? They have to learn that. In Europe, they learned it. You have hundreds of wars in Europe. So it was not the European Union as one happy family we see today. It went through stories. In America, the same. And Africa also didn't have time to do that, so it's doing that through its different wars. And when a new government comes, the first thing they want to do is to bring justice. And that's where the ICC comes in action. And the first thing they do, because you have to understand that the national legal systems are not fit enough, unfortunately, to deal with those crimes. We are talking about mass murders here. Million people. You need a real powerful national legal system to deal with all that. We need the technical assistance. You need to train people. You need judges if you want to prosecute people. And how do you get judges? You don't buy them in the market. You guys train them because you are professors at universities, right? You train them. And the ICC has all that ready. International cooperation. That's what the countries seek. That's what Rwanda looked after to unify its population and to show that it is ready to participate in international effort to combat impunity and promote justice. The number one thing you have to look after when you have 100,000 people, 1.5 million people, and more killed before your eyes. The second thing, as I said, why ICC in Africa? Because of the resources, as I said, the technical assistance. Those countries, newly independent, need to learn how to implement justice, how to strengthen domestic legal system, and how to handle those cases, those crimes that maybe in the penal code didn't even exist. So it means legislation, new legislations, you need to change it before prosecuting people, otherwise how are you prosecuting? Preventing impunity to show it happened once, we learned the lesson, it won't happen again, not on our territory. Promoting accountability, you did it, you have to be punished. People, the world, have to see you, that you were responsible for what happened in our country. And what is the biggest stage to do that? The ICC again. Because then, when Bemba came, we could see him. When Laurent Gbagbo came, we could know, the whole world could know what was happening in Côte d'Ivoire, and I will again come back to that situation. Deterrence. So if you see the first and the second war in Congo, you have to understand that it was the first one was Laurent Désiré Kabila, who wanted the power from Mobutu, who was, let's say, a bit longer than he should and who didn't understand the role of democracy. And then the other one had an army supporting him, an army given by whom? The neighboring countries, including Rwanda, Burundi, to help him to get the power. And the Second World War was the second Congolese war was the opposite. Laurent Désiré Kabila had the power, but the people who supported him to come to power are not satisfied now with how he is using that power. So again, that same army came to take the power. Only it was not on the territory, but another country. And many other countries went inside, such as Angola, of course Burundi again, of course Rwanda again was there, even Mozambique sent weapons. So if you are a country, you have a territory, you are not that military powerful to protect your frontier. Africa is big. Congo is very big. You cannot protect all the frontiers, all the borders, it's too big. So you need at least the deterrence power to say, if you come and you commit crime on my territory, the ICC will prosecute you, they will find you, and you will see it. So that gives them something. That gives to people the hope that, yes, we must go there, at least to give protection to our people. There are other ways to give protection, but that is a bigger way, the biggest of the arena, deterrence. Let's go there. Complementarity. Why are African countries member of the ICC? Because the question is, if it is so bad, why don't you quit? It's like a wedding. When you live together with your spouse, she's not happy. You quit. Actually, no, she quits, you know. Or vice versa. England was not happy in the European Union. What happened? Brexit. I'm hearing that France is unhappy as well and other countries, okay. But still, there is always a possibility to quit and to move forward. Nobody is forcing anybody here. But there are 33 African countries in the ICC. Africa is a big continent, as I said, 54 countries, so it's normal that it has many countries in the ICC. This is nothing big here. It makes perfectly sense, actually. Côte d'Ivoire is the newest country to enter. Why? Because in the conflict between Laurent Gbagbo and Alassane Ouattara, and the thing you have to understand, and I really want to bring that point, is those African countries were colonies. So you still have the colonial power influencing, unfortunately, sometimes the elections, supporting a party and not supporting the other one, because they have their economic interest in the countries. We spoke yesterday about the economy and the ICC, economic crime, so they are real. And in that situation, Côte d'Ivoire was not a member of the ICC because it didn't find necessary to be a member. The country was at peace most of the times, okay. But then during the elections, with the tons of death, Laurent Gbagbo was then the president, and he was mostly assisted by Charles Blé Goudé, who was very vocal. Like it was the same, more or less, like in Rwanda, somebody agitating people, promoting violence, as they say. But anyway, they have been acquitted. So, but during that situation, the country was not member of the ICC. But when the new government came, when Alassane Ouattara came, he, of course, asked to join the ICC because, as I told you, the first thing country usually want to do after being through such a horrible experience, tons of death, they want to join a powerful mechanism to fight impunity, to show that they have learned the lesson and they want to move forward and to give hope to the victims because they are still victims. We are talking about dead people. We are talking about dead moms, fathers, kids, and so on. So they are victims that will live with that the whole life. So you want to give them hope, right? So that's the first thing they do. That's why the ICC is here. In the case of Burundi, it's very simple. Well, because the then president, again, the problem here is democracy and the non-understanding of, this democratical game. Here I am now, but I can lose the elections, I can move, and so on. It didn't work out. And Mensah, how many more? 10? How many more minutes? 2 more minutes. Okay. Well, we have lunch, so we have time. Again, so Burundi review, and we have about 30 cases. So now we are talking about the critical part. 30 cases before the ICC, of course, involved African nationals, and 9 out of 10 cases prosecuted were African nationals, and that's the problem. That's where we start with, we spoke about the prosecuted guys yesterday, so it's enough we can jump this, but I want to quote Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda. So remember, I showed Rwanda, the first country with the genocide in 1994. So the president of Rwanda stated the ICC was supposed to address the whole world, but it ended up covering only Africa. Right? Why? If 9 out of 10 are from Africa, right, prosecuted, if more than 30 cases mostly are African cases, yeah, Africa have the more country there, but still, if you see the death tolls and what's happening and the impunity, you can say it makes sense, but there is that feeling among the leaders. So you see the victims, of course, they are looking for justice. They want justice. They want to end the impunity. But it always happens that the perpetrators sometimes can, I don't know, not like that. And there is also that patriotism. Let the African be prosecuted where? In Africa, because we have our own mechanism. So I will talk about the model law on universal jurisdiction in Africa, because the African Union passed an act called the Model Law on Universal Jurisdiction, which has no definition of international crime, but indicate a list of crimes, including drug trafficking and terrorism. The second point was the 2014 Malabo Protocol, and it was planning the creation of an not ICC court, but an African court very similar to the ICC. Because since ICC is following only Africa, let's prosecute the African criminals in Africa. So the 2014 protocol came to life. However, this protocol had 14 types of crimes, not 4 like the ICC. And the crimes are genocide, of course, crimes against humanity, war crimes, mercenarism, meaning that Wagner can be prosecuted in Africa if ever this protocol turns into action, corruption, money laundering, trafficking in person, drugs and hazardous waste, illicit exploitation of natural resources. So this is adding something new to this protocol. This is taking the African continent to the next level. Though the ICC, of course, can cover all these fields, but the African protocol, the Malabo protocol, have this written and stated exactly that this we can prosecute. This we can sue these people for that kind of crime. The only problem with the Malabo protocol, which never came to life till now, it has time, the only problem is Article 46A, and I mentioned 46A bis. No charges shall be commenced or continued before the court against serving African head of state or government or anybody acting or entitled to act in such capacity or other senior state officials during their tenure in office. Malabo Protocol, Article 46A bis. That is exactly what they don't want the ICC to do, because the sitting head of state, like Kenyatta, for example, but he's been acquitted. Laurent Gbagbo, who lost the election, but he's been acquitted as well. Well, they have been in front before the ICC. And for the African patriotism, it's a bit painful to watch that. So, as a conclusion, what can I propose after this topic? Well, there is already ongoing cooperation, international cooperation between the African Union, the African state, and the ICC. We see a lot of negative comments in the news, but it's not true because the countries are still cooperating. Otherwise, they will all withdraw, just like Burundi. Nothing happened to Burundi. It's still existing, right? They can withdraw all, but they are not withdrawing. Even South Africa is still saying, we are still member of the ICC, wrong communication, you didn't get us, you didn't understand us. We are member, right? They can withdraw, but they're not withdrawing. It means there is still cooperation between the countries. However, that cooperation can turn into complementarism, meaning the African Union, the African countries can now what to do, organize around their own model law for criminal matters, maybe follow the Malabo Protocol or adjust it, or to use the experience of the special courts and chambers, for example, in the case of Sierra Leone or the Central African Republic case, or many other cases where they trialed the culprit of crimes on the African continent, and of course they are still in prison, just like Ibrahim Assé, the ex-president of Chad, who was, for example, trialed in Senegal and died in prison in Senegal. And that was a success story for the African Union. So it is possible to cooperate, it is possible to improve the matters, and it is possible to make the African feel that justice exists in cooperation with the ICC. Thank you.